Fyodor Ivanovich Bagration. Right. Well,
that's legend. It's
yeah.
surely.
Well, yes, very much. Georgian prince. Fought at Austerlitz. Fought at Eylau. Fought at. I think he fought at Friedland as well. Commander of the Second Army. Presided over quite a magnificent strategic retreat in front of Davout in order to unite with Barclay at Smolensk. Very brave commander, tactically gifted, strategically slightly less. His strategic instincts were not quite up there with someone like Kutuzov. But yeah, legendary. But does he go above Kutuzov? Does he go below Platov, below Wittgenstein? Where does he go in legendary? That's the question.
Tough. Because I would probably say Wittgenstein has more strategic acumen.
Yes.
So he probably doesn't belong above him. But at the same, but you see, Platov is there.
Yes.
Because of his basic. Okay, Platov didn't do anything particularly wrong in 1812. He did most things right. Yeah. And he made himself like bigger than life. It's impossible not to put him as legendary because he was actually a good commander and literally a legend.
Yeah.
Bagration, if we're being fair, maybe belongs above Platov because he actually had more responsibility than just the Cossacks.
Okay, my perspective on this, and this is in part due to reputation rather than actual sort of skill and competence and stuff. But Bagration is a very tactically skilled commander. And he wasn't a complete idiot when it came to strategic instincts, but he was just a bit too keen on getting his army destroyed. So I think he probably does go under legendary, and there is a case for putting him above Kutuzov, but I think I'll put him. I think he probably does go below Kutuzov because even he does have a great reputation in Russia and also beyond, but Kutuzov still enjoys the better reputation if we're doing stuff on. I mean,
to be honest, there's a case to put him below Platov in a way because Platov is all for retreat and harry the heck out of the enemy, and he's also more legendary than Bagration, despite the romance of the death of a hero.
Yeah, I mean, maybe internationally there is a case. Internationally, in 1813 to 1814, certainly Platov's reputation would have been greater than that of Bagration. Then again, Napoleon did say Russia has no good generals. Bagration is the only one.
Which we could say is inaccurate anyway, but all right.
This is true. Napoleon said a lot of stuff. But we both kind of mutually know on Twitter a couple of people who would either want to put Bagration above Platov or Platov above Bagration.
I'm a Platov fan, I'm afraid, over Bagration. So that I would put myself, without putting more bipartisan thought into this, I would put Platov above Bagration. I suppose if I was to think about it deeply, Bagration was the army commander.
I mean, if we're talking reputation-wise,
it's really difficult. Etc.
It's really difficult because Bagration, he is the guy at the foot of the of the Borodino monument. When you go to the battlefield of Borodino, Bagration more than anyone else is associated with that hallowed ground. So
okay, right. I'm putting my impartial hat on now. if it's just me, there are 3 Russian commanders associated with the 1812 campaign, and a secret 4th.
Yeah.
The secret 4th is Platov. But Bagration is over Platov.
Okay, I agree. I think we'll put Kutuzov, Bagration, Platov, Wittgenstein in that order. But yeah, very difficult, very difficult. And now it gets on. Yes, right. Field Marshal Alexander Vasilyevich Suvorov, Prince Italiansky, Count of Rimnik.
Suvorov has just an endless amount of names.
Yes, yes, endless amount of names and accolades and titles, and so I think we are both, God tier was made for Suvorov.
We did this because basically his ghost haunted the Russian army for the rest of the Napoleonic Wars, and he was literally sort of,
for greater or for worse, right?
Yeah, exactly. He haunted them, he inspired them, he dogged their footsteps. Suvorov was in the Russian army to stay, as if he was still alive.
Yeah. No. So Suvorov is very much still in the Russian army today. Like the cadets in St. Petersburg, their school is named after Suvorov. I mean, he's very much still. Everyone in Russia knows his name. He's known for never having lost a battle, for his brilliant Italian campaign against some of the best generals of the French Revolutionary Army, and in fact, arguably at that stage, perhaps even better than Bonaparte. I would agree. Well, there is nothing to agree with. We
agree with. This is the little insider joke. This is the insider joke. He's in God tier. He is above everybody.
Exactly. Right. So, having gone through Suvorov, we now turn to Mikhail Andreas Barclay de Tolly. I feel like I should give you the chance to talk about Barclay de Tolly, because I can talk about Barclay de Tolly for several hours, and to be fair, you probably can as well. But
but in the interests of the fairly snappy pace we've been keeping up for this video, we'll try and restrain ourselves. Barclay de Tolly he's the best Russian general of the Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah, of the 1812 generation.
Yeah. That's my succinct version of it. When I first read about him, I got on board with him because I felt he was essentially the Russian Wellington.
Right. Yeah.
And for that reason, I might. The only thing that is stopping me outright saying he belongs above Kutuzov is Kutuzov's reputation. I mean, he's definitely above Bagration, and as I said before, there are three Russian generals associated with 1812 and a secret fourth. And the first three are Kutuzov, Barclay de Tolly, and Bagration, and a secret Platov. And in Soviet times, this was ordered sort of Kutuzov, Bagration, fairly similar kind of in stature, and Barclay pushed down out of the way because he was of his German roots or associations. And Barclay, however, then was rehabilitated later on, and more and more now people would say Barclay was the guy who saved the Russian army for it to win out in the end, and i.e. without Barclay there is nothing for Kutuzov to do.
Yes. Bagration had its way, the army would have been destroyed, Alexander may have been forced to make peace. I mean, I completely agree, as you are not surprised to hear. I think Barclay de Tolly belongs above Kutuzov. I mean, I appreciate that we have been doing this legendary tier largely according to reputation, but Barclay was the best Russian general of the Napoleonic Wars, and he continued commanding in 1813 and 1814. As is it the most senior Russian commander, and second to Alexander in what he could tell the Russian army to do. So yeah, absolutely. Now we do get from the sublime to the fairly ridiculous. Count Bennigsen. So, what would you say about Bennigsen?
Curious fellow, Bennigsen.
Yeah.
Held on at Eylau, gave Napoleon a bloody nose. Is argued to have actually at least checked Napoleon tactically in a battle following Eylau.
Yeah.
Then completely loses it at Friedland. And then compounds his error by making all the wrong arguments in 1812 that would have got the army destroyed.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, his conduct at the in Moscow. I mean, even at Borodino. And bear in mind, we are kind of taking Barclay's word for this, but the sort of he was Kutuzov's chief of staff right after Kutuzov was appointed, and headquarters became rather chaotic as a result. And there was a sense that actually Bennigsen was running the show, and the question is, and he was the guy who suggested the position in front of Moscow, where both Barclay and Kutuzov basically just said, do you just have some sort of fetish for fighting in front of rivers?
Did you learn nothing?
So yeah, I mean, the question is, which of the bottom two tiers he goes.
Yeah, this is absolutely the case. I mean, he's absolutely breakable, and not really legendary. Even if you take into account the fact that we put Wittgenstein there because he was legendary in his own time. He's probably got helpers in 1812.
Yes, I think in 1812 specifically, he's probably he's because you can argue tricks only with Eylau, but
snowstorm,
snowstorm crash into was it Augereau's corps? So God help us, but above or below Chichagov? I feel like we
probably.
Like
no, I think it's just me sort of pondering. Chichagov failed to take the right opportunity. Bennigsen would have absolutely taken the wrong opportunity.
Right.
But because of Eylau, he's forgiven quite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it takes someone semi-decent to actually hold Napoleon to a standstill. But arguably it was.
I could put him as high as competent.
Right. There is actually a case for putting him as high as competent, but I feel like for the
for 1812, it's like
given what we've said about Bennigsen over the course of our series, I think for the banter factor alone, I think he belongs in God help us. The only question is whether we give him the tiny amount of face and put him above Chichagov, or whether we actually rank him below an admiral.
Oh dear, that would be a slap in the face, wouldn't it? I mean, okay, surely Bennigsen would have known to check for river crossings.
This is true. Okay, let's put him above Chichagov and okay.
He could defend a position. Mostly.
You can.
Although, I mean, it has to be an appalling weather, apparently, and Berezina was appalling weather, so maybe it would have been okay.
Yeah. True. All right. that's BENNIGSEN, you know, just ranking above an admiral. Right. Now we move on to Ivan Fyodorovich Paskievich. I will let you talk about him for.
Well, yes, quite. He was part of the big counterattack on the RAEVSKY redoubt with Yermolov and Kutuzov, I believe, and thereafter again served with distinction and became obviously basically the grand old man of the Russian army. Or at least the shining star of the Russian army, the troubleshooter, the guy you get to go and do the dirty work, and he did it very well. I think because Yermolov and Kutuzov are in Unbreakable, he should be with them.
I would agree. I think, let's put him. Does he go above Vorontsov or below? I mean, both of them. I think for the time being,
he was a divisional commander, wasn't he?
He was the commander of the 26th Division, which held the redoubt at Borodino, at least to begin with. And actually, we forgot to include Likhachov, who replaced him in our list, but you know, such is life. But yeah, so yeah. And according to his memoirs, at least at the Battle of Smolensk, he was the guy who told RAEVSKY what positions to take up, and so I think he's definitely very tactically gifted, and you know, even though he was considered, you know, a lackey of Nicholas I and maybe not actually a particularly brilliant sort of army commander, I think he probably still deserves to be at least unbreakable. The question is whether he goes above or below Vorontsov, I think. I think we'll put him I think we'll put him just above Vorontsov in Unbreakable. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we carry on, and we've got seven more left. So Carl Wilhelm von Toll. What would you say about von Toll?
He strikes me as, if memory serves, as another staff officer.
Yep, that's right.
And he was he Barclay staff officer?
So he was Quartermaster General of the First Army, and continued to be Quartermaster after Kutuzov arrived.
Okay.
So yeah, technically sort of junior to Yermolov in the staff hierarchy, but still very much involved sort of identifying where to fight, because he was actually properly trained as a staff officer. According to Levin, Diebitsch was probably slightly better. Where incompetent, and bear in mind, I'm not saying incompetent in the category competent he goes.
Yes, it's a tricky bit because we've been saying incompetent a lot.
So I think he probably goes. I'm gonna put him above Konstantin and below Bagovu. Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% on that, but I think that's where we'll put him. We carry on to another very interesting chap, Grand Duke Tsarovich Konstantin Pavlovich Romanov, the younger brother and the heir to the throne of Alexander I. And at the beginning of the campaign, the commander of the Imperial Guard. What do you want to say about the Grand Duke?
He loved the army. He loved military things. He loved basically excellent choice for the commander of the Imperial Guard, even though in terms of actual military acumen, in terms of leading and such, he had some questionable calls. He supported, because obviously, as we all know, hilariously, he supported Bagration in the Stand and Die Brigade against the German faction, and he might be a God help us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the highest he goes is probably the bottom of competent, and that's probably for some of the stuff he did sort of not in 1812. Like at Austerlitz, he showed some initiative in trying to hold the center at the Pratzen Heights, but it was just too little too late. I think I'm probably going to put him in God help us, and I'm going to put him below Bennigsen. I mean, especially because he was just like sent back to Barclay sent him back to St. Petersburg. He didn't play any role in the campaign. Thenceforth, he did come back alongside his brother in 1813 and 14, and he held some commands, although not particularly distinguished. So yeah, I think God help us definitely for 1812. I think it was slightly better in the other campaigns, but yeah, I think for the meme factor as well, I think we'll put him there. Right. The next one is General Alexander Ostermann Tolstoy. Where do you think? Well, firstly, what do you know about him, and secondly, where do you think he should go?
Not an awful lot about him. He was at the Council of Filey, wasn't he? Or is he the one? Yeah. It was the Council of Filey, and I don't remember which side he took.
Yeah, I think there's actually a degree of ambiguity as to which side he took.
But I don't really know much about him in terms of how. If I was to rate him, I would have to look into it. I'd have to ask you.
Right. Which indeed you are doing right now. Ostermann Tolstoy, he was commander of the 4th Corps. Well, I think the initial commander of 4th Corps fell ill or something, and then he took over, but very early in the campaign. And I think he sort of participated in some of the rearguard actions. To be fair, I don't know a huge amount of him about him either, but in 1813 he commanded he kind of commanded the Allied rearguard as it was retreating at the Battle of Kulm, and defeated General Van Damme in the process, held Van Damme back sufficiently long for Barclay to bring reinforcements, Austrians and Prussians, and eventually defeat Van Damme and in fact capture Van Damme. Although I have also read sources which indicate that, and during the battle, Ostermann lost his arm, which is why you can sort of see him sort of with his cloak. And but I have also read that at Kulm, Ostermann wasn't really in charge of anything. Apparently, he was drunk, and he was like. And I think he has a bit of a reputation as a bit of a dandy, and for like he got himself in such a situation that he happened to stumble on the French camp, and he tried to get to give the French soldiers orders, and was wondering why they weren't responding, before eventually realizing what was going on and legging it back to his own lines. I can't remember where I got that from, but that would probably make him a God help us.
Yeah, he's sounding tricks only, and God help us.
I think I'll put him at the bottom of tricks only. Yeah, I think that's a fair. And again, arguably he can be below BENNIGSEN actually, but we'll put him in tricks.
For now, he can sit there, I guess.
Because like also Ostermann Tolstoy, like at least he didn't put an entire army in jeopardy, which BENNIGSEN did. So on multiple occasions, and it was only others who had to fix the situation. So I guess that's where we'll put him. Okay, and we go on to Alexander Tormasov. What do you have anything to say about him?
He was commander of one of the armies, wasn't he? He was army commander.
Yep. Indeed, he was.
Where was he?
So he was commander of the Third Army.
Yeah.
The Army of Observation. His main task was to observe what the Austrians were up to. Actually, get an early victory at the Battle of Kobrin over Renier and Schwarzenberg. And indeed, I think it was the earliest victory that the Russians could celebrate, and was celebrated by a Te Deum, even though like it was very sort of minor. But he did sort of it was a sort of stalemate, and he participated at Mariadoslavets and at Krasny. So certainly a competent commander. I don't want to put him in unbreakable. I mean, he had a fairly easy task, and the Austrians didn't really want to fight him anyway. So yeah, if I were to put him anywhere, it would probably be somewhere incompetent. He should probably go somewhere around Ostensacken, and probably I'm actually going to put him below Ostensacken. So there we have for Tormasov. Right. Let's carry on with Nikolai RAEVSKY.
Well, he's another one of the unbreakable ones, surely.
Commander of 7 Corps in Bagration's army. Fought the Battle of Satanovka, although, yeah, it didn't actually go terribly well for him. Fought at Smolensk, fought at Borodino, fought at Mariadoslavets. He was pretty much everywhere. And on to 1813 and 1814. I think he was actually wounded probably around Mariadoslavets or something, which is why he didn't play a massive role. Nowadays, underrated. I think RAEVSKY is definitely legendary.
Yeah, I was going to say, I said unbreakable to begin with, and then, I mean, the redoubt is named after him.
Yeah.
And so there's actually an accurate argument that he's legendary. He's actually quite well known in Napoleonic War circles, and especially in 1812. So yeah. So at the bottom of legendary.
Yeah, below Wittgenstein at the bottom of legendary. Okay. Now we go on to Nikolai Alexeyevich Tuchkov, otherwise known as Tuchkov the First, because there were 4 of them who were active in the Napoleonic Wars. The commander of Third Corps, and he fought at Borodino, as well as some of the earlier engagements. And I think his Third Corps did go and support his brother at Valentina Gola. He was commanding Third Corps, the left, at the extreme left of the Russian position, where he was mortally wounded fairly early on in the battle and replaced by Bagarut. It's a bit of a tricky one, but where do you think he goes?
From what I know of his action at Borodino, it was a very competent stand until he was killed. He held his he held his position against Poniatowski until he was killed. I see no reason to believe that he wouldn't have been able to extract his men as the battle progressed. Had he remained in command, I would say he's a very competent officer.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. The only question is where incompetent we put him. I feel like he's either right next to Bagravut or right next to Konovnitsen, and I'm not sure. I think he probably, because he was fairly senior and he did participate in some of the earlier Allied war councils, whereas I don't think Bagravut did. Bagravut obviously completed the job that he did at Utitsa. I might actually put him above Bagravut. I think he belongs there. So now we go back to Miloradovich.
I've had him at the back of my mind since we couldn't decide, and he might actually. I think he might be legendary.
I agree, but the question is, where in legendary do we put him, and do we put him? I think he certainly he'll be sort of. I think he'll be below Platov, but is he below Wittgenstein and is he below Raevsky? Because much of what he did in the 1812 campaign, like he only arrived at Borodino on the eve, pretty much on the eve of the battle, and yeah, he did a fairly good job of leading his men at Borodino and of commanding the rear guard. But I think his main contribution to the 1812 campaign was the pursuit of the defeated Grande Armée, and obviously by then the campaign had largely been won. But they very much like Platov, chasing down the enemy. But I think my question is whether we put him above or below Raevsky.
So he destroyed Ney's corps at Krasny.
Yeah.
He won against Davout at Vyazma. Granted, morale in the French army was pretty bad by that point against Davout. Ney was pretty impressive. He held that road pretty well. And he punished the Grande Armée as they passed by as well. He took up a very good position. He might just edge Raevsky.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's not much in it though. I'm not really.
Because this is the thing, right? I think it's a question of whether you think the Russian retreat was more important or whether the Russian advance was more important. Because Raevsky was pretty much everywhere during the retreat. Whereas Miloradovich...
And also we need to make it. I mean, the difference they faced. Raevsky at Saltanovka came against Davout with a perfectly formed and led and organized army, and he couldn't break through. Miloradovich hit Davout when they were crumbling morale-wise and took advantage of the situation, I guess. I generally argue on Twitter that Davout probably should have been able to hold off Miloradovich, but I don't know enough about the battle, to be honest, to actually concretely say this. So maybe actually in 1812 Raevsky deserves more of...
Yeah, because I was actually just about to put Miloradovich above Raevsky, but I think we both believe that the retreat was more important than the advance. And with that in mind, and especially with Raevsky, like being in the second army, the smaller of the two armies, that was the one which was in most danger from Davout and from being sort of completely isolated. And arguably Raevsky, well, obviously Bagration did as well, but Raevsky played a massive role in saving the second army. So yeah, Miloradovich goes in legendary, but right at the bottom of legendary, just below Raevsky. And I think that makes sense. I think, yeah, Let me just have a look at the whole thing to see whether there's any people we should consider switching around. But I think it's a fairly good list. Arguably, yeah. I mean, some of them can maybe go a bit higher, and there's the question of whether Davidov and Kornev might go in legendary. But I think the tricks only is fairly sparse, so I think we'll keep them there.
Like we say, the way we're allotting these is not necessarily actually bad to worst.
Yeah.
They're all in these slots for different reasons. For instance, Ostermann Tolstoy is in tricks only for different reasons than Davidov and Kornev are in, and Varov indeed. The bottom three are there partly as a joke, and because of their performance in 1812 specifically.
Yeah.
If you took the Napoleonic Wars in the total, Bennigsen would actually have to be somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. True. So I think I am fairly happy at the list as it stands.
Top tier is very strong. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I think I still have a bit of a question about Kutaisov, whether it's unbreakable or competent, and I think
okay.
I think I'm probably going to demote him to competent, and I'm probably actually going to put him above. I mean, this is the thing, Dibich was a staff officer, Kutaisov was an artillery officer. I mean, these are, fairly specialized roles, but also very different roles. And arguably, Kutaisov had the more important role. So I'm going to put Kutaisov above Dibich at the top of competent.
I think he deserves demotion just because it really wasn't his job to go beyond retaking the redoubt. Whatever happened to him, he obviously went way too far in whatever happened, unless he was just so unlucky as to be atomized within the redoubt itself, which just doesn't seem...
Right, I mean, he charged beyond the redoubt. I mean, this is the thing. The redoubt was already taken.
Yeah,
yeah.
That is not the sign of... the class of the other ones who held their ground and managed to,
get away.
It's Doktorov, RAEVSKY, Paskevich, and obviously Paskevich and Yermolov were in that charge, and they both knew when to stop. And neither of them technically had the seniority of general of artillery.
Right. Sure. Yeah. I think that's fair, and I think. I think the Unbreakable looks pretty much. Yeah, they all look pretty good, and I have to say, there are a few which, in hindsight, after going through this list, I have forgotten about. So I think the ones we're missing really is Pavel TUCHKOV. Who commanded the rearguard at Valentina Gora, and arguably saved half of the First Army from being destroyed. And I think he probably goes somewhere in Unbreakable, probably nearer the bottom, because I mean he didn't have a lot of men. He was eventually captured and his position overrun. So yeah, I think probably somewhere around Eugen, probably just above Eugen, for Pavel TUCHKOV, and then for another guy I was thinking was, and I mentioned him beforehand, was Pavel Likhachov, whose 24th Division replaced Paskevich at the redoubt and again, his men basically fought to the death to defend the redoubts. And there's a case for actually putting him above Paskievich, but I think taking the rest of the campaign into account. And Likhachov ended up in captivity, and he was pretty much the only guy on the redoubt who ended up in captivity. Likhachov would probably go, around Pavel Tuchkov's, probably just above Pavel Tuchkov. Like, I think Unbreakable definitely also includes, defending right to the death.
There's two. I think there's two criteria for Unbreakable. One is personally unbreakable as a general and a leader, and the other one is having done something that is relatively thought to be, anybody else would have broken ages ago.
Yeah, I agree. And Likhachov held on for as long as possible. Most of his men killed. Unlike Paskievich, Paskevich's 26th Division did actually run, and then it had to be reformed for the counterattack. And Paskevich's division also took a very hard pounding, and I don't think there's anything you couldn't really fault.
No. I mean,
for doing so.
Nobody should fault anybody for running at Borodino when they ran, because.
Yeah, it was horrific. But yeah, just finally, another guy I should really have mentioned is Prince Dmitry Golitsyn, and he is a cavalry commander who arrived on the eve of Borodino, and he was given command of the cavalry on the Russian left, essentially supporting Bagration. And he was very successful in doing what he did. He later fought at Krasny and was given the command of one of the three columns to pursue. It may have even been pursuing Napoleon's Guard, but he definitely sort of served with distinction. Whether he's brilliant, whether he belongs in Unbreakable, or whether he belongs in Competent, I think he's probably very high in Competent, and he would probably go below Debich, I think, in the Competent section. I feel like we're actually having a very good distribution here.
Yeah, actually.
From it is kind of like a normal distribution. I mean, Legendary is slightly sort of over, but you do get a sort of bell curve type thing once we add to the Unbreakables in as well. So I'm pretty happy about how this has turned out.
Yeah, it's almost as if we had no favorites. Actually we have our favorites. We have our favorites. We have our favorites. We have a couple of our favorites, and we have a couple of our other people we like to make fun of. But more or less, actually, this is a fairly. I think if I were looked at this with just basic knowledge, and to be honest, I do have basic knowledge. From my point of view, this is actually a credible.
I think it's a justifiable. It's a defensible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure once we get this after the to be fair, the video will be, once the video is out, obviously you can include a link to this in the description below, and we'll also share it on social media. So
you can make your own Russian general tier list and tell us why you think we're wrong, and then we will and we will both tell you that you don't know anything. You shouldn't be making tier lists.
Exactly.
No, we're very friendly people. We will take on board what you have to say.
Yeah. But we will be very happy to receive your suggestions and to see what you come up with, and how much you disagree with us, because that's what history is about.
So, right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching all the way through to the end of this video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope maybe you learned something about the Russian generals of 1812. If you want more information about them, then we have other videos about them.
In the description, and wherever you can find them, there's a playlist somewhere.
Yeah, this will be part of the playlist itself, I think. And this has been a lot of fun, hasn't it?
Yes, it's been great fun, and I'm sure at some point in the not too distant future, we will do another bonus episode on something that we have thought up on Russia and Napoleon. So
absolutely,
stay tuned.
Stay tuned, and from us here at Historyland and Josh and Jimmy in 1812 with Josh and Jimmy. Good morning, good night, good day, and
good life.
Yeah. Have courage. We'll see you.
Yeah.
We'll see you.
Enjoy. Have a nice Thanksgiving, Christmas, whenever this comes out.
Indeed. And New Year, and and we look forward.
Enjoy the vaccine.
Yeah, enjoy the vaccine. Enjoy the highs. Enjoy the vaccine, the mellow vaccine vibes, and we look forward to your counter tier lists on the Russian generals, because we all know they're much cooler than the French marshals.
Of course, most definitely.
Okay, thank you, everybody.